Hello milady mateys, what is up? So, I recently saw this video by History in Bits called How Well is the Byzantine Empire Portrayed in CK3? And the too long didn't read of it is basically that it's fucking garbage, obviously. Of course, this lad was a little bit more polite about it. And I want to say that a common cope about Crusader Kings 3 on release and the absolute fucking state of the Roman Empire depiction was that eventually DLC would fix it, just like they did to Crusader Kings 2, where they completely changed Roman mechanics, added a unique succession system, and added a unique so-called bureaucracy system. However, that begs this question: would such a thing even be something to look forward to? And for that matter, how did Crusader Kings 2 handle the Byzantine Empire? Did it handle it correctly? And in this video we will be addressing just that. So instead of how well did they do the portrayal in Crusader Kings 3, this video will be titled How Well They Did It in Crusader Kings 2. So let's get started. Now, a little spoiler regarding the answer to the question that I just posed would be this comment by this guy who very aptly put it: in Crusader Kings 2 it is still incorrect but improved when compared to CK3. And I like this comment because very often people make the mistake of assuming that the CK2 system was accurate, and often they praise or defend it kinda like this guy does. At least it feels like it does. And he claims that they were powerful clans in the empire and the Magnates were a landholding aristocracy. And it almost feels like he is defending the CK2 or even CK3 system, and in the process he is pushing a false narrative. So for that reason, and to help enlighten my viewers a little bit, many of you presumably not being autists like me, having spent hundreds of hours, maybe even thousands, studying on the administration of the Roman Empire, let's just get started with a little crash course. Now, the Roman Empire always had military districts, but by the 7th century a new type of military district called the Theme System arises, largely in response to the Arab invasions, and these themes are commanded by military governors called strategoi or strategoi, as I would butcher it like many non-Greeks do. And this strategoi, which means generals in Greek, at the beginnings of the system at least, often had combined civil and military authority, meaning that in addition to managing local armies, raising militias, or responding to raids, they may have also been responsible for things such as tax collection, or maybe even have local judicial authority. Now, as the years pass by, and we go from the 7th century to the 10th century, it is correctly recognized that these strategies have too much power. So first of all, what they do to alleviate this problem is that they separate the larger themes into smaller provinces, so that each strategos would cause less damage if he went rogue. And secondly, and that pisses me off because I often see internet so-called historians ignore it, is that military and civil administration are separated. So, for example, the strategos of the Anatolican theme would have strictly military duties, and the civilian administration would instead be appointed towards civil governors, such as praetor, a Roman title that still survived to that era, or kritis, which translates to judge, or epoptis, which translates to overseer. So now strategy are a purely military office. And another interesting thing is that as the years go by, eventually the term strategos stops being used to denote the title of a military governor and is instead basically relegated to a mere general, and instead the title dux is used, which is the Greek equivalent of the duke title that you may be more aware with. And I believe that this trend begins after the Komnenos dynasty takes over the empire. And an example to denote this separation between administrative and military governorships is the biography of Andronikos Doukas Palaiologos, one of the early Palaiologos guys, well over a century before they took over. And as you can see, an act preserved records the Sevastos Andronikos Doukas serving as dux and praetor of Thessalonica. Dux being the military governorship of a region and praetor denoting the civil governorship. And I want to add that while obviously as the empire grew increasingly more unstable and decadent, again the civil and military titles of governorship started to increasingly merge. We can see this trend of naming someone as a dux and praetor, which is an implicit recognition that these titles have a separate function and should not be conflated. The granting of such a title can be seen all the way to the 13th century, well after the Fourth Crusade. So even during periods of crisis, this distinction was often enforced. And another obvious thing, in case you didn't know, these governorships were not hereditary. In fact, not only were they not hereditary, they were also temporary. They were not under any circumstances a lifetime grant, nor there was ever any expectation that there would be a lifetime grant. They were a temporary appointment, and often a dux, say of the theme of Bouchelarion, could have, for example, be recalled in order to be sent towards the military governorship of a Bulgarian theme, or alternatively, maybe he would be needed at court to serve as an advisor to the emperor or a fiscal administrator, or maybe, even more simply, his term just expired and he is recalled and that's it. He does not have any inherent claim to the province or anything. So now that we got the basics out of the way, let's just get into the game. And I think that I will get started with the standard 1066 date. So we get into the game, and on the first glance we see things that may lead us to the wrong conclusion that this is a good enough system. For example, obviously there is no distinction between military and civil governors, but you could try to cut them some slack. But here we go into Pamphlagonia, and we got this 10-year-old strategos. And if you've been paying attention on what I was saying a few minutes earlier, already this is starting to collapse, because why the fuck is there a 10-year-old strategos? Why would the empire ever appoint a fucking kid into the administration of such a province? So you naturally go to revoke this title, and because this title is a viceroyalty, you can revoke it without invoking any tyranny. But what the fuck is this? This will lower Strategos Alexios' opinion of you by 60. And it doesn't actually end there, because if you notice, the fucking button is grayed out, and the reason why it's grayed out is because you must have 100 prestige. So let's use cheats to add that prestige. Alright, and let's try again. maybe. So not only does he basically hate you for revoking the title, not only do you need to spend prestige somehow to revoke what is treated as a title, where in reality it should have been treated as a normal government appointment or something like a generalship or a court title, but also a fucking 10-year-old whose regent is a random lowborn could actually resist an imperial order. And it doesn't even end there, because there are even worse implications with this system. For example, let's say that we weren't playing a dog shit fucking game, but we were actually playing a good simulation where this so-called strategy actually had a regional presence, and let's say I wanted to reappoint the strategos of the Trebizond province towards a Bulgarian theme so that he could deal, for example, with a Pecheneg invasion. Now, I basically cannot do that because there is no such mechanic for such a thing. I can only revoke the title, which for basically almost any character it will be seen as something worth starting a civil war over. And not only that, but it also offends them, so they basically are entitled to a lifetime presence over their province. But anyways, let's push things even further and show you even more why this system is garbage. So we have Strategos Theodoros Gavras of Trapezond. So I'm going to use cheats again in order to ensure that he accepts the revocal of his governorship without any drama. Alright, so now he will say yes. So I revoke his governorship. Let's unpause. And now he has minus 100 opinion of me. And get this, because this shit is really fucking funny. I get minus 60 for revoking the title, as the game said. I get minus 10 for holding too many duchies, alright. Apparently that's a thing. I'm also getting minus 30 for the elector's titles held. And holy shit, this enrages me so much, the election thing, but I will discuss it a few minutes later. Now hang on for the time being. And another minus 20 for being a title claimant, and another minus 20 for designing the Duchy of Trebizond. And the motherfucker also gets a claim on the Duchy of Trebizond, a weak claim, but a claim nonetheless. And not only that, but he also keeps the counties, because that's right. Paradox expects us to pretend as if this system is acceptable just because he loses his epic Duke title, which is utterly meaningless. But the reality is that he still holds the counties. As a matter of fact, every county is held by a character, and by all reasonable means, this is basically an extremely decentralized feudal system. And let me unpause for a few ticks. As you can see, he even retains his army, because each county has over 1,000 levies. So where I am trying to get is that these motherfuckers got the normal system, the normal regular feudal system. They sprinkled in the viceroyalty title, which is just the viceroyalty duchy title, which is just a variant of the regular duchy title, with the exception that you can revoke it, and that on the owner's death the title goes back to the emperor, but otherwise it's a fucking duchy. And they create this little delusion of an imperial administration system, when in reality you are just playing with regular feudal mechanics, not unlike anything you would see in France or the Holy Roman Empire, but with some extremely dogshit smoke and mirror the illusions, basically, in order to hopefully trick you into thinking you are playing some advanced simulation if you didn't know any better. Another interesting thing is this guy who is my half brother, and he hates my guts. And apparently, among the reasons why he hates my guts is that he is a fucking title claimant. He has a strong claim on the Duchy of Thessalonica. So yeah, apparently we have an administrator of Nicaea hating the emperor because he also wants the administration of Thessalonica, and we are supposed to somehow take this seriously. And not only that, but he also hates me because he wants a seat on the council, which is another dog shit mechanic from Conclave that is extremely poorly implemented and basically serves as just a way to prevent the player from min-maxing his council and instead encourage him to appoint vassals and set. But it is honestly a very poorly implemented mechanic, and here it is hilariously out of place, and there is very little logic behind it. So reappointing governors is basically impossible because, well, now this person will hate me for life. And to be honest, even if I could do such a thing and, let's say, cycle between the governor of Trebizond and the governor of Nicaea, and it wouldn't result in retarded shit like them getting claims on each other or other such bullshit, it would still be worthless. And why is that? Let's unpause for a while and see what the Seljuks do. And basically I could keep the game playing for years, and you would never see any of these regional governors do anything whatsoever. They would do absolutely nothing with their armies. And in the case of the Roman Empire, this is extra infuriating because that was literally their purpose. That was the point of their appointment. They would be placed in a province, they would govern it, and they would have to deal with things such as raids or skirmishes, and basically defend the empire for as long as they could until reinforcements came or a campaign was started and they were asked to participate in it. But all these guys, all these governors, might as well not exist. They do not have any AI whatsoever. They may as well be brain dead. So the only purpose, for example in this case, the only purpose of the 3,300 army that this guy has is for me to raise levies from him. And even then, as you can see, I can only raise a tiny fraction of this amount, especially because he hates me too. So, for example, this guy, Strategos Romanos, who ended up becoming Roman Emperor, I believe, a year after the death of Constantinos, also has 3,000 troops. He doesn't hate me that much. Let me also send him a gift. And let's see what happens if I raise his troops. I also get 300. So, another funny part about how this levy system works is that, look at this shit. I can only raise, as the Roman Empire, I can only raise 13,000 troops. And in addition to this, I can also raise the Schola Palatine for another 1,000 troops. I can raise them for cheap, and I can also raise the Varangians at a discount, getting another 1,000 troops for a grand total of 16,000 troops. And the very notion of the Roman Empire of the middle 11th century being able to raise a maximum of 16,000 troops before being forced to start hiring foreign mercenaries is just so fucking laughable. And the contributions by the fucking governors are also so tiny and pathetic. 400 troops from Paphlagonia, 600 troops from Nicaea, 300 troops from the Anatolikon theme. Like, what the fuck is this shit? Even if you wanted to simulate the circumstances that happened on the Battle of Manzikert, where Emperor Romanos Diogenes marched with 40,000 troops, but half ended up deserting him, you wouldn't be able to. Why? Because you simply wouldn't be able to afford the mercenaries due to how low the Roman monthly balance is. And don't get the wrong idea, by that time the empire had entered a period of military decadence, so to speak, and the professional armies were neglected to a certain extent in favor of mercenaries. But these numbers cannot ever justify themselves under no circumstance. Being able to raise just 4,000 troops out of the entirety of Anatolia should not be a thing. And for reference, the population of the empire at the time would be roughly 16 million people. And the annual revenues would be around 23,000 kilograms of gold. So yeah, try to make sense out of these numbers, because I certainly can't. And another really fucking dumb thing that I just have to show you. So we have Ioannis II of Armeniakon here, and this is the opinion that Theodoros has of him. And as you can see, he doesn't think too badly of him. Now get this. Also note that I also have a bad relationship with that guy, partially because he also has a claim on the empire, but also because I have too many elector titles held, which gives him a -30 relation. And I also have too many held duchies, which apparently is also supposed to somehow make sense. But anyways, check this out. I will grant him the title that I just took from this guy as a feudal grant. And now look at this shit. Now he hates him. He gets -20 relationship because he is a title claimant, and another -20 because he deserves the Duchy of Trebizond, and another -40 because he wants a seat on the council, because yeah, I already covered that. But anyways. And do you know what's the funniest part? The funniest part is that Theodore could at this point just launch a fucking internal war. Can you believe this? An internal war on the Roman Empire. Like, I would actually have to go here and basically vote for external, which basically nobody would accept. So I would have to basically sack them off and try to win their favor in order to stop internal wars between fucking governors in the Roman Empire. And I would have to ask for my vassal permission for such a thing. Like, it's like, the more you look into it, the more maddening it gets. But anyways, if I had to sum this up and basically explain why the administration system sucks in 1 minute, it would be because the administrators do not actually administrate. They are glorified vassals with a different name to try and trick the player into thinking that they are playing as a non-feudal country. They do not administrate anything. They are basically independent rulers. They do not perform their function of fighting the empire's enemies. They wage their own internal wars between each other. They get claims on their administration, on their governorships, and they can declare wars on their fellow governors in order to get their governorships back. And it's honestly just a huge fucking joke at how wrong they got it. And the worst part is that some people actually fall for it. Like, they get this system that is by all reasonable means feudal. No, what the fuck is this? Oh, Speak of the devil, I was talking about internal wars and we just got one. Oh wait, never mind. I think that's a peasant revolt. Yeah, my bad. But yeah, these fucking governors will only give you a tiny fraction of their troops and they will only raise their own troops when it's time for them to fight an internal war. They also pay a very laughable tax of 20% to the empire, so whatever revenues the strategos of Trebizond would make, for example, if he made 100 gold, he will keep 80 for himself and he will give 20 to you. And even if you were to max out tax obligations at the cost of getting almost no troops out of them, which entirely defeats the purpose of their governorship, you would still only get a maximum of 40% tax. Now, for reference, the governors of the Anatolikon theme, which was historically one of the most prestigious ones, they would often receive a very generous amount of around 15 kilograms of gold per year, somewhere between 10 kilograms and 20 kilograms, it varied. So, if I wanted to make an extremely uneducated and rough approximation and say that the Anatolikon theme had a population of around 1 million people, even though we don't really have any satisfactory figures, historical ones. But yeah, if we just pretend that Anatolikon makes up for 6% of the empire's population and an average economy, then it would have an annual revenue of around 1,300 kilograms of gold. And if of that amount the local governor only got 13 kilograms of gold out of that, that would be 1% for the governor and the rest going either towards the local administration or towards the imperial coffers. But unfortunately, what we got here is a feudal system almost identical to the French one, but with a few words changed and a few slightly adjusted mechanics in order to give the impression of something else. Now, getting away from the administrative part, let's get into the fucking succession system. Now, if you haven't played Crusader Kings 2 for a long time, especially as the Eastern Roman Empire, their succession system is basically fucking identical to the Holy Roman Empire system. Can you believe this shit? And this is how it works. Here you got your strategy. They each got a base of 5 votes, and they get the strength of their votes altered based on their traits. For example, this guy has a high intrigue score and a high martial score, and that gives him plus 45 votes, making his ability to determine the future heir stronger. Or let's see, this guy has the Caesar honorary title, which gives him plus 15 votes. Calling it horrible wouldn't do justice to actual horrible things. Like, I remember when this update first happened, I was so fucking disgusted at this shit. And the worst part is that people just ate this shit the fuck up, and to this day you get people defending this system, or God forbid calling it historically accurate, and looking forward for its implementation towards to Crusader Kings 3 as if it were a good thing. Now, before those motherfuckers decided to go with this dogshit system, they had something else, something quite simpler that worked and was simple and perfectly representative of the era. How that system worked was that the Roman Empire had a primogeniture system. However, if the emperor wished it to, he could alter the succession through the granting of the Caesar title. And I also believe that the Caesar title only affected succession if granted to a close relative, such as a brother or a nephew or a son. But honestly, it has been so many years since this system last existed that I do not even remember exactly how distant a relative could be, or if just being a member of the dynasty was enough. But anyways, that system was not perfect, but it was acceptable and good enough, so to speak. Historically, the process was a little bit different, with the emperor not necessarily using the Caesar title, but by actually crowning his nominated heir as a co-emperor. But honestly, it wasn't that big of a deal, and it was capable of being representative of the period. For example, Emperor John II Komnenos famously favored his younger son Manuel over his older son Isaac. And you know, that decision was not without trouble, it was not without drama, but it was enforced. And in the context of the game, it could be easily simulated by having your succession altered through the Emperor's will, and in that version of the game, that would be through the granting of the Caesar title. It was simple, not entirely accurate, but good enough and definitely better than this fucking atrocity. This basically copy of the Holy Roman Empire system, but with a few adjustments. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And I also just want to add one last thing into this rant. I want to mention the possibility for those fuckers to create titles. For example, this guy, this governor of Carcianon, would have hypothetically the ability to create the Duchy of Cappadocia, because it currently does not exist. Or alternatively, if a ruler got enough territory, in that case, not if, he does have enough territory, and when he also acquires enough cash, he would be able to create a fucking kingdom level title. And the best part is that because, let me check this out, yeah, because kingdom level vice royalties. Oh wait, never mind, I got this wrong. Duchies means that it enables kingdom and duchies, where kingdoms means just kingdoms, alright. But what I wanted to say is that the game basically gives you an ultimatum. You either create this title yourself and waste pointlessly money and piety creating it. Specifically, it needs 400 fucking gold and 200 piety in order to create it, so that you can give it to the vassal as a vice royalty and at least have some control over the title. Or you do not create the title yourself, but the vassal himself creates it, and he does not create it as a vice royalty, but he creates it as a feudal title, and he does have that option and he will use it. And when he does, basically all notions of immersion or suspension of disbelief are basically thrown in the garbage. And what you are left with is the realization that you are playing a garbage game with a garbage system that does not do any favor at all whatsoever, neither towards the Roman Empire nor towards the time period. But anyways, I will end this video by addressing also some parts that Crusader Kings 3 has gotten wrong, which I want to address myself. It won't take too long, while also taking under consideration that Crusader Kings 3 is almost a 3-year-old game at this point. So yeah. Thing number 1 to bitch about: the Roman Empire in Crusader Kings 3 begins with only 9,000 troops. So remember how I was bitching about Crusader Kings 2 and how you could only raise 15,000 troops? Well, In Crusader Kings 3 it is even worse. It is not as worse as as it was at the release, where I believe you could only release 5,000 troops. And I still remember when I was streaming it and I found it so fucking outrageous. But yeah, the issue still persists. The Empire still does not have the military numbers that it should have, nor does it have the financial strength to simulate how many troops it should have had during that period and during the Roman Seljuk War. Number 2 thing to bitch about is that the Varangian Guard is still a generic mercenary company, and it's really fucking funny because when I was bitching about it at the game's release, people rebuked me by saying, oh, this is just a release version, they are going to immediately fix it, why are you so not nitpicky? Obviously, there's no reason to complain about this, right? Well, here we are, 3 years later. Varangian Guard is still a regular mercenary company, and the Romans do not get any type of exclusivity or discount with them whatsoever. Number 3 thing to bitch about is this bitch right here, Princess Anus of Sebastia. And this bitch is basically completely made up. She did not exist, nor is there any evidence that she existed. And the story of her dynasty is that her family used to rule an Armenian principality around here, and they surrendered it to the Roman Emperor, and in exchange they were granted the theme of Sebastia to rule over. And at this point I showed that the Roman Empire did not always have centrally appointed non-hereditary governors at every spot of the empire, and sometimes concessions such as that were made on an individual case-by-case level. Another example would be the principalities of Serbia, or after the Crusades it could be the Principality of Antioch, which swore fealty to the Roman Emperor. But such arrangements were uncommon, and they would often only be accepted due to certain strategic factors. But yeah, this page is completely made up. And because I am a chud and a schizo, I believe that Paradox devs basically just took advantage of the lack of information in order to weasel in a female Roman ruler and give you the opportunity to play as a girl boss woman. But yeah, that just about sums it up. If you haven't played Crusader Kings 3, the Byzantine Empire here basically doesn't have any special mechanics whatsoever. It is a regular primogeniture realm. You actually start with you actually start with autonomous vassals, just like any other feudal country, and all your lords are feudal. You do not have any of the mechanics from Crusader Kings 2. And yeah, that's about it for Crusader Kings 3. I am going to end this by pointing out basically why I feel that this video had to be made. And ultimately, there are just some people who really have zero fucking idea what they are talking about. And these people, not having the slightest fucking idea on what they are talking about, they always either have extremely dumb takes, or they pressure for change towards shitty things. For example, look at this guy, and pause if you want to read this. Honestly, reading this shit made me cringe so badly. The first time I saw this, I just couldn't finish through half the post. I just had to look away, or I would have punched my monitor or something. But having read this, look at this shit. Now, obviously he has 9 dislikes, but they are not enough. He also has 18 likes, and that's the point. Dumbasses like this often are very loud on the forums, and they happen to be the drive or the supporters for some really fucking dumb changes, with some people not even understanding at all why the current Crusader Kings 3 depiction is bullshit, and others sink into the Crusader Kings 2 representation as a good thing or as something acceptable and as something that Crusader Kings 3 should look forward to. And personally, my take on the difference between these two systems is that if Crusader Kings 3 is a pile of shit, then the Crusader Kings 2 is a slightly smaller pile of shit with some sugar sprinkled on the top and some other fluff that are somehow supposed to camouflage the fact that it is still a pile of shit. But yeah, that's pretty much it. This video is a little bit different than my usual gameplay videos, but I still hope that you enjoyed yourself and that hopefully maybe you learned a few things about the Roman Empire that you either may have not known or that you may have been led to believe that things were different and you had been fed a false narrative through your experience with Crusader Kings 2. But yeah, I have started making videos again. You will soon see the resolution of my Polish campaign that I have left unfinished, and depending on how this video gets received, I may also make another historical video covering on basically how Crusader Kings has utterly butchered the feudal system, because that's another cope often used by Paradox fans. They're saying, oh, Crusader Kings is all about feudalism and dynasties, so it makes sense that countries that existed outside of this scope cannot be represented very accurately, right? But the reality is that they have butchered the feudal system just as horrifyingly as they have butchered the Roman Empire. And I may also make a video on that to ultimately point out why the Crusader Kings series is fucking garbage. And I also want to make another video on Crusader Kings 3 because I recently rewatched it and it is basically very, how can I say it, very basic. I basically played the game a little bit, reacted badly to a few aspects of it, and then rage quitted. Which, don't get me wrong, it was a perfectly natural reaction, but I still feel that I need to make a more comprehensive video explaining thoroughly why Crusader Kings 3 is fucking garbage. Especially since Crusader Kings 3, for whatever reason, has high ratings and I have basically seen nobody else sitting on it. It's as if I am the ultimate contrarian or something, and I'm stuck on some bizarre world where people think that games such as Crusader Kings 3 are acceptable or fun to play as. I cannot comprehend it. But anyways, lads, that should be it. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you will be looking forward for my next video. Goodbye, lads. Look at this guy, by the way. Look at him. Like, this post was 2 years ago. Oh, heavens, could you look at the time? It's Byzantine o'clock, our daily Byzantine thread. There probably will be, perhaps as soon as the next flavor pack. Basically, this guy was asking about, he was looking forward for the Roman rework, and look at this fucking seal. Only the devs though. I'm sure they're not happy with it either. But looking at Northern Lords, we know that they can do nice and detailed things grounded in academia. Holy shit, he actually said it. With some fun and silly stuff added on top. By that he means those dogshit fucking cringe meme events that make me wanna gouge my eyes out. And look at him. 3,000 posts, 5,000 likes. Look at these reactions too. Holy shit, dude. These people really are irredeemable. Look at all these fucking those good boy badges. But yeah, it's so fucking fucked that people like this exist. I cannot comprehend it. And the fact that this wasn't met me with pure disgust and hate, and he instead got all these likes is incredible. Like, imagine a grown man talking like that. And the best part about this post is that how it was made 2 years ago. Like, what did he say? There will probably be, perhaps as soon as the next flavor pack. And here we are 2 fucking years later with nothing. Still a feudal Roman Empire, still nothing, still no flavor, still no special events. Look how smart this faggot is. Holy shit, dude. And the best part is this, grounded in academia. Like, holy fuck, dude. These people actually exist. They actually breathe air with us. Holy fuck.